Hello everyone, my name is Isaac. I'm a guitarist, a relatively new one. I've been playing for about a year, and I picked up the guitar to begin with because I was so inspired by the classic rock and prog rock artists that I grew up listening to and being exposed to that I wanted to participate. I wanted to hear myself playing that music and just have fun with it. I try to fill my life with music in any way that I can. It's very much a passion of mine. And this is just another really cool way that I get to do that. I won't be monetizing these reactions, so this really is just for fun. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and listening to Aqualung by Jethro Tull. This is going to be our first Jethro Tull album on this channel. I'm really excited to get into it. Jethro Tull is a band that I have some kind of a history with growing up. They were listened to in my house growing up about as much as the Beatles or Pink Floyd were listened to. Not nearly as much as the Grateful Dead, but Jethro Tull had a very clear place in my parents' musical library. And so I grew up being exposed to that kind of experimental but also like pretty Scottish folk kind of vibe. So I imagine this album is going to feel very much at home for me. I'm really excited to get into it. I know a thing or two about Ian Anderson. I know that he started kind of as a Fender Stratocaster kind of player. He wanted to be like a classic rock star in the way that you might consider a traditional one to be, but over time he felt like he wasn't able to distinguish himself as an artist with the Strat because there's so many Strat players. How do you distinguish yourself? So he got good at guitar, but he later picked up the flute, and he was a self-taught flutist for a long time before I think his daughter started becoming classically trained on the flute, and he just started like training along with her after he'd already kind of taught himself. So he was coming into his training with a bunch of other kind of unconventional breaking the rules kind of techniques, and you get to see how that comes out in the music that he go on to play. So without any further ado, I'm really excited. Let's jump into Aqualung by Jethro Tull. We're going to get started in 3, 2, 1, bam!
Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intent. Snot's running down his nose, greasy fingers smearing shabby clothes. Aqualung, my friend, don't just start away uneasy. You poor old sod, you see it's only me. Sitting on the park bench, I'm little girls with bad intent. Starts running down his nose, greasy fingers smearing shabby clothes. Hey, Aqualung, drying in the cold sun, watching as the frilly panties run. Hey, Aqualung, feeling like a dead duck, spitting out pieces of his broken luck. Hey, Aqualung.
This song makes me emotional, actually. It hits me at varying degrees at different points, but here's why. I saw an interview when I was first looking into this song, like back in the winter, funnily enough. I was looking into this song because I was becoming interested in Ian Anderson in particular, and I saw an interview with Ian Anderson where he was talking about this song, and he was talking about how this character is really a representation of the sort of violence but also humanity that exists within people. And like it's like fear and violence. And at first I thought he was talking about the character of this homeless man that's sitting in the park. But I think he was talking about the perspectives that were being expressed, because in the initial part of the song and in the last like verse of the song, it's clearly like a societal impression. It's like an outward judgment of somebody that you've never met based on the image that you have, because what you see is like this homeless man who's deathly sick sitting in the park watching children play. And there's something that people automatically register as being sinister about that. And it's not even, the song's not even condemning that perspective, but there is an examination of it that's happening. And then there's this breakthrough where it's the perspective of another person that like knows this homeless man, and this other person just sees like a sick old man in the cold that doesn't have anywhere else to go. And there's something that's very sad about that it makes whatever the second voice in the song is, they want to help. And when you've been steeped in that perspective for long enough, it's executed so well. And that guitar solo is so beautiful that when that last verse comes in, there really is this sense of like, leave him alone. I don't know. that part of it gets me kind of emotional. And I have a really great appreciation for this song for being able to take you through multiple perspectives and sort of like make you examine your internal biases, because I think this song is it's an examination of internal biases. It's the way that we can be both fearfully judgmental and sometimes violent because of that, but also compassionate. So how do those, how do we explore that? We explore it through the perspective of somebody who doesn't know this homeless man and somebody who does. And I think that's what this song is. I think it's really well crafted. This is just a really cool piece of art and a really cool opening to an album. Let's move into the next one. Bam. Okay, maybe got my perspective flipped on its head there by this, because some of the depiction there of the houseless man here was pretty sinister. Um Watching her through the railing. So, Cross-Eyed Mary, is this song about a little disabled girl that's being stalked? Like she's poor and being taken care of by a villager. You're like, she is a villager that lives with other poor villagers and is being stalked by this homeless man, because that seems to be the kind of depiction here. It's a really dark world that's being painted here in this album. Is this a concept album? Because it's seeming like, I thought that the song Aqualung was a one-off, but it's seeming like this is an overarching exploration that's happening here. The guitar being passed back, and like the way that it had like a flute solo in the middle that passed over to the guitar, and then there's like the piano doing different, there was like a slide down of the keys that was really fun. This song went in a lot of different directions, and it played with different rhythms in a really, really cool way. um wow, this song kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. I've never like, I don't think I've ever felt this slapped in the face by a song before in my life. Okay. Okay. This was really cool. Let's move into the next one. Bam.
On present platform, do your soft shoe shuffle dance. Brush away the cigarette ash that's falling down your pants. And then you sadly wonder, does the nurse treat your old man the way she should? She made you tea, asked for your autograph. What a laugh.
Okay. Short and sweet was the name of the game on this one, huh? This was really good. Let me look at the lyrics again, because like there's only like 7 lines in this song. I'm not even kidding. This is a very, very short piece. Also, another question that I have is Ian Anderson talking about like real world places? Is Preston Platform a real place? Is Hampstead Village a real place? Because he's mentioned these things multiple times. It's really interesting. Okay, so this song seems like it's about a performer that, and then you sadly wonder, does the nurse treat your old man the way she should? She made you tea, asked for your autograph. What a laugh. Like, oh, like a performer that doesn't have the time to take care of their parents, so they have a nurse that's looking after their parent, and they're doing their performance, and in the back of their mind they're sadly wondering about their parent that they can't really care for. So there's this sardonic wistfulness that's being expressed with the what a laugh. It's like, I mean, it's almost like you're being fake nice to me, but like, is that how you really are when I'm not looking? Maybe I'm looking into that too much, but that does seem to be, for how short of a song this is, it feels, I accidentally kicked the camera. It feels right to explore like what actually is here, because like it's so beautifully played, and I think it's Ian Anderson on the guitar. He's got a very distinct way that he does his hammer-ons that adds flavor and texture to the way that he plays. So for as little as they put here, it feels like it's worth examining. So that's the reason I just wanted to spend a little time thinking about that. This is really cool, and also just, again, very beautiful. I enjoyed that a lot. Let's move into the next one. Bam.
As I did walk by Hampstead Fair, I came upon Mother Goose. So I turned her loose as she was screaming. And a foreign student said to me, was it really true? There are elephants and lions too in Piccadilly Circus. By the bathing pond to try and catch some sun. Saw at least 100 schoolgirls sobbing into handkerchiefs as one. I don't believe they knew I was a schoolboy. And the bearded lady said to me, if you start your raving and you're misbehaving, you'll be sorry. And the chicken fancier came to play with his long red beard and his sister's witch. She drives a lorry. Green, I popped them in their house. 4 and 20 laborers were laboring and digging up their gold. I don't believe they knew that I was Long John Silver. Johnny Scarecrow make his rounds in his jet's black Mac, which he won't give back, stole it from a snowman. As I did walk by Hampstead Fair, I came upon Mother Goose. So I turned her loose as she was screaming. Must have been at least 100 schoolgirls sobbing into handkerchiefs as one. I don't believe they knew was a schoolboy.
Okay, let's talk about this, because, like, I got, like, slapped in the face in the second verse, and I don't know if this particular part spoke to the overarching theme of the song, but it colored the way I viewed the rest of the song. It was talking about um laughing down by the laughed down by the putting green. I popped them into their holes. Like, I think they're talking about playing, like, golf. I think it's golfers, right? Like, it's like rich people. Um, uh, and then it's talking about laborers digging up their gold. They didn't know I was Long John Silver. Like, I think it's saying that, like the laborers are, like it's talking about the laborers being exploited. They're digging up the gold, and then they're being robbed. Because wasn't Long John Silver a pirate? So he's like a thief. So he's like stealing the gold from the laborers, and it's aligned also with the imagery of, like, rich golfers. I could be totally off base, but that's what struck me in the second verse there. It seems like it's talking about exploitation. And it's like people at different stages maybe of exploitation. Schoolgirls sobbing, Mother Goose screaming. Like, it feels like it's exploring a world where exploitation has led to suffering. And it's not just exploring the ones suffering, but also the ones benefiting from it. Also, the guitar work, those like interlude riffs that happen at different points in the song are just so cool, and add this, like, medieval quality. And that, like, the whole vibe of the album so far has been like a medieval village. So it's held this consistent kind of aesthetic that I've really enjoyed, and has felt really at home for some reason. It's really cool. Let's move into the next one. What a cool album. Bam.
Wond'ring aloud how we feel today. Last night sipped the sunset, my hand in her hair. We are our own saviors as we start, both our hearts beating live into each other. Wond'ring aloud, will the years treat us well? As she floats in the kitchen, I'm tasting the smell, yeah. Of toast as the butter runs, then she comes, spilling crumbs on the bed. And I shake my head. And it's only the giving that makes you what you are.
What a high point in the album. Wow. That was really beautiful. You know, all the songs up to this point in the album have been kind of like fly on the wall kind of vibe. Which is very typical of Ian Anderson. He would make a habit of, still does actually probably, makes a habit of sitting on the train and kind of people watches, and that's where he gets a lot of his ideas for songs. So you get this kind of fly on the wall thing with a lot of his lyrics, but this was really cool. It felt intimate and personal. It kind of it's like it brought the camera in on one house and on like one little happy couple that are like having a nice time in life together and are just wondering if it'll stay that way. And like, and that's in the first verse, but then there's this I think it's like getting into the moment a little more, not worrying so much about that stuff in the second verse when it's talking about her bringing a baked treat to the bed and spilling crumbs, and like it's just very charming, and you lose yourself in the moment and in the beauty of that, and like suddenly those questions don't matter. At least that's how the song hit me. I maybe Ian Anderson had a different take on that, but that is that was really beautiful. That like I felt warm, and the song just, it's a very high point in the album, and it's a very sweet release from a lot of tension that's been kind of broiling throughout the album so far. I'm really excited to get into the next one. All right, let's get into the next one. Bam.
To the cinema and leave you in a wimpy bar. You tell me that we've gone too far. Come running up to me. Make the scene at Cousin Jack's. Leave him to put the bottles back. Mends his glasses that are cracked. Well, that's one up to me. Hey. Cloud to ride, pack the tennis club inside. Trouser cuffs hung far too wide. Well, it was up to me. Eyes down on your bicycle, you know it feels like an icicle. The yellow-fingered smoky girl is looking up to me. Yeah. Common working man, with a half of bitter bread and jam. And if it pleases me, I'll put one on your man. When the copper fades away, oh, it's up to me. Season comes to pass, the Dayglow pirate sings at last. And if I laughed a bit too fast, well, it was up to me. take you to the cinema and leave you in a wimpy bar. You tell me that we've gone too far, come running up to me. Hey.
I gotta say that song, it threw me for a loop a little bit. The dun 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 dun, those parts were really cool. Super like funky, weirdly enough, for what Jethro Tull usually makes in my experience with them so far. The lack of care, like the way that it was like the character kept describing bad things that they were doing and then just shrugging it off by using like the title lyric, "It's up to me," just being like, well, you know, yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, it's what I did. And there's this kind of I don't know, it's interesting. There's this kind of callousness to the way that it's written, that it kind of, it's whiplash from like the sweetness that came in the song before. That got me a little bit, but that was really cool. And I really get into the arpeggiated flute because it sounds super watery, like it's like a rock being skipped across water. Really interesting sound. I'm really into the flute playing. It's a staple of Jethro Tull, but like there's a reason for that, and it's because there's a way that he has with it that just it can take you places. This song was cool. Let's move into the next one. Bam.
People, what have you done? Locked him in his golden cage. Golden cage. Made him bend to your religion. Him resurrected from the grave. From the grave. Is the God of nothing, if that's all that you can see. You are the God of everything. He's inside you and me. So lean upon him gently and don't call on him to save. You from your social graces, oh, and the sins you're used to wave. You used to wave. and the graven image you know, with his plastic crucifix. He's got him fixed. Confuses me as to who and where and why, as to how he gets his kicks. He gets his kicks. Confessing to the endless sin, the endless winding sounds. You'll be praying till next Thursday to all the gods that you can count.
Okay, let's talk about that before we move into the next one. So Ian Anderson is somebody who is pretty chill about religion in general. If you look at interviews where he talks about it, he is somebody who is like, he shows kind of agnostic attitudes, but he's not somebody who turns his nose up at the idea of God or discussions of God. So I think to the extent that religion is being critiqued in that song, I think it's more of a discussion of, it's less about the belief itself and more about the forms of exploitation that can happen when people try to when people, it's people who use religion to exploit people who want salvation of some kind. It says in one of the parts, lean on him gently, but don't, like, it says like, don't rely on him to save you from your social graces or something like that. Like, it's sort of talking about how, like, God isn't going to save you, and the people who are convincing you that he's going to are the people who are cheating you out of your money. And it says you'll be praying till next Thursday to all the gods you can count. It's like you're spending all your time doing this and paying the church, who has historically exploited people, so that nothing actually gets done to save people from the exploitative society that we've found ourselves in. Kind of one that he's been, that's been getting described throughout this entire album. Like, this is all the creation of man, and we have all the ability to rescue ourselves from it, but people kind of turn to something that they don't have any control over and can't see to rescue them from it. I know religion and politics isn't exactly a fun topic, but I think sometimes if you're not engaging with religion and politics, you are not engaging with the art pieces that are being crafted and talked about here. I think an honest discussion of the art requires a discussion about these hard topics. So thank you to anybody who bore with me through this. I hope it sparks discussion. Let's move into the next one. You know what? And I also really loved the flute work in it. There's some really interesting textures that got made, especially especially on the in the middle section where it was like I don't know how to describe it. It's like having the sound wrap around your head 100 times. The way that he goes up and down his notes is something that I've never heard in any other kind of like rock band. It's so explicitly Ian Anderson, and the way that it ends off on like a couple really long notes, but they're like arpeggiated. It's really cool. That song was really cool. But I like it. I got so lost in like the actual topic that was being discussed here that I like the nuances of the music kind of escaped me a little bit. I'll have to go back and listen and kind of refresh myself a little bit at some point. But for now, let's move into the next one. Bam.
Oh, Father high in heaven, smile down upon your son. Yeah, was busy with his money games, oh, his women and his guns. Ah, Jesus save me. They kill an Indian or three, and then he made his name in Hollywood. Oh, just set the white man free. Ah, Jesus save me. Saves, oh, well, it better save himself from the gory, glory seekers who use his name in death. Ow! Oh, Jesus, save me. Saves, oh, well, it better save himself from the gory, glory seekers who use his name in death. Ow! Hey. Oh, Jesus, save me. Yeah. Oh, well, I saw him in the city and on the mountains of the moon, yeah. His cross was rather bloody, oh, and they could hardly roll his stone. Ah, Jesus, save me.
All right, we keep the kind of uncomfortable conversation going because that's the art right now. The song seems to be continuing the discussion about exploitation, but and also within religion, but from a different angle. It's not necessarily talking about how the institutions of the church exploit people's desire for salvation to profit off of them at this point. It's more talking about the way that incredibly imperialistic nations used their religion as justification and as a cudgel to do violence upon people in the West. He was talking about Hollywood. He was talking about an Indian or three. It's messed up language, but the dehumanizing language, it's a part of the way that the dismissal of humanity that was happening right there was being justified by the cross, talking about how the cross is bloody, how Jesus ought to save himself from the gory glory seekers who something murder in his name. Like there's this kind of like the religion isn't the problem. The thing that is the problem is the institutions exploiting people's need for salvation and nation states that are incredibly imperialistic and racist using religion to justify the bloodshed that they engage in to take land and exploit it for its resources. I could be off base, but I kind of don't think I am. I think that there's something. I think that Ian Anderson, Jethro Tull in general, has got a set of balls, and they kind of remind me of Roger Waters in that way. They are not afraid to talk about incredibly difficult topics. These are not radio friendly songs, but from an artistic standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, especially because he's in the UK, these are incredibly important things to talk about. So really cool song. And super groovy. That beat kept me nodding my head the entire time. There's a kind of bluesiness to the way that it kept going up and down the scale. It was just a lot of fun, but the subject matter, not very fun. Let's see what else it has in store. Let's move into the next one. Bam.
Well, the lies, separation enfolds you, and the products of wealth push you along on the power wave of their spiritless undying selves, and you press on God's way to your last dime as he hands you the bill, and you're spinning the slipstream, tideless unreasoning, paddle right out of the maze, and you paddle right out of the maze.
Okay, let's pause that. This album, I've noticed this on a couple different pieces. It slaps you in the face over and over with tone shifts. Like it gets you into, like, it'll get you into a warm headspace and then just crash in with a bunch of tension, or it'll come in. Like in this, it was very, very bright and pretty. And then at the end, there's like these strings that are just very discordantly going. And it gives it this sense of like being on rocky waters almost. That's kind of neat. But there were other songs on the album where it was kind of tense for a lot of it, and then got really pretty at different points. It might have been Up to Me. I can't quite remember, but Ian Anderson really, and Jethro Tull, the players on this album in general, understand the importance of tension and release for tone in music. And I think that like you can see the way that their understanding of that gives them almost an at-will control over the mood of the album, the way that it can get you feeling gentle and warm, and then also kind of dark and moody. And it can happen in the same song. It can happen within the span of 20 seconds. It's incredibly impressive. These guys are really proficient at what they do. Let's move into the next one. Bam.
Shuffling madness of the locomotive breath runs the all-time loser headlong to his death. Oh, it feels the piston scraping, steam breaking on his brow. Oh, Charlie stole the handle, and the train didn't want to stop going. No, it could slow down. Oh, he sees his children jumping off the stations one by one. His woman and his best friend in bed and having fun. Oh, he's crawling down the corridor on his hands and knees. Oh, Charlie stole the handle, and the train didn't want to stop going. No, it could slow down. Yeah. He hears the silence howling, catches angels as they fall, and the all-time winner has got him by the balls. Oh, he picks up Gideon's Bible, open at page 1. I thank God it stole the handle, and the train didn't want to stop going. No, it could slow down. No, it could slow down. No, it could slow down. No, it could slow down.
Let's talk about that. That piano, the like wetness that it had, genuine highlight of the song for me. That opening sequence, very much a highlight of the song for me. I want to look into this a little bit. I also noticed this in the in hymn 43, I think. The complexity of the sound that Ian Anderson accomplishes with his flute is freaking insane. The way that he gets a roll off of a bunch of different notes, and then you'll hear him take a very short breath and then just keep going at it. Like, you'll hear him take breaths as he's playing. It's incredibly cool. Based on my read of it, it comes across like Locomotive Breath. It's like somebody who's trapped in it's not a literal train. It's somebody who's like trapped in a cycle, or they're kind of like on a track that they can't get off of. It talks about the all-time winner having him by the balls. It almost sounds like there's like a debt that he has that's keeping him from being able to settle into his own life. It talks about different other people getting off at various stations, but he jumping off actually at various stations. But that's interesting. People are jumping off, but he isn't. He's trying to get the train to stop. So he's stuck. I don't know. I'll need a little bit more time to process what that means on a societal level. But like, my initial read is it sounds like somebody that's like in debt, or it's somebody they're trapped in something that they're trapped in some kind of cycle that they can't get out of. And again, that flute work. This is a really cool song as a whole. I think this is one of the hit pieces off of this album, and if so, I could completely understand why. Let's move into the next one. Bam.
When I was young and they packed me off to school, and they taught me how not to play the game, I didn't mind if they groomed me for success, or if they said that I was just a fool. So I left there in the morning with a God tucked underneath my arm, the half-assed smiles and the book of rules. And I asked this God a question, and by way of firm reply, he said, I'm not the kind you have to wind up on Sundays. So to my old headmaster and to anyone who cares, before I'm through, I'd like to say my prayers. I don't believe you had the whole damn thing all wrong. He's not the kind you have to wind up on Sundays. Well, you connect, communicate me on my way to Sunday school, and have all the bishops harmonize these look when I was young, and they packed me off to school, and they taught me how not to play the game. I didn't mind if they groomed me for success, or if they said that I was just a fool. So to my old headmaster and to anyone who cares, before I'm through, I'd like to say my prayers. Well, you can excommunicate me on my way to Sunday school, and have all the bishops harmonize these lines. I don't believe you. You had the whole damn thing all wrong. He's not the kind you have to wind up on Sunday.
Okay, let's talk about this. So it's, what's funny is it kind of confirms what I was talking about earlier. I said, I was talking about an interview where Ian Anderson was like, he's talking about how he didn't have a problem with religion. It's just the way that it gets twisted and exploited to get people to do things that kind of reject their own personal meaning in favor of a quote unquote objective meaning prescribed by an institution that's disconnected from the source of the religion, that doesn't actually understand what gives life meaning, and therefore strip the religion of its meaning. And what's really cool about this narrative is that this is a character that they break free from that cycle and they find their own meaning within the religion. Like if they're gonna worship a god that respects like the craft that he wants to do, doesn't want him to go and sing the same lines with all the bishops. Like it's sort of like, if this is the form of religion that I have to ascribe to in order to believe, then you can excommunicate me on my way to Sunday school. I don't want to be here. He like, it's a character that would rather believe in a god that lets him make his own meaning. And I think that like it's super valuable, and it's a really cool way to integrate religion into your life. Especially if you're somebody who struggles with religious trauma, like many people do. It's a really cool way to integrate it. I don't know. This is a really cool song, and it was intense, but also gentle at different points, and it kept up a triumphant rhythm. The guitar playing was incredibly triumphant. The chords are bright and powerful. Absolutely gorgeous. That might be my favorite one on the album, actually. I'll have to think about that, but I think that actually might be it, because it's such a culmination of what this part of the album has been talking about exploitation and talking about religion. There's this triumphant breaking of the cycle that gets to happen here that I think is really cool. Let's move into the next one. Bam.
I'll see you at the weighing in when your life's on total maze. And you set your wealth in godly deeds against the sins you've laid. So you place your final burden
This song was really freaking cool. There's okay, so the flute work in this, again, incredibly intense, and just another example of Ian Anderson just like going off the wall in a really, really cool way. The speed that he can get up to with that flute, it's something that you don't hear a lot in rock. It's something that really is a privilege that we got to have in the rock sphere. Just that kind of skill. Um the rhythm, the constant towing the line between tension and release in this song was really interesting, where it kept a strong enough rhythm that you didn't feel stuck, but it didn't release into something that was bright and the way that you know that they could. It's an intentional kind of thing, which makes me think that this is almost like this is like the bad guy's good time in a really weird way. Send the chamber pot back down the line to be filled up again. Don't pretend perfection, you'll be crucified too late. So there's there's this macabre kind of imagery, somebody who bathed their hands in blood. Like, oh, we'll cover you with mud. It's burial. What? It's talking about being killed by... Is it a church thing? It says, and he offers round the hat. Is there a different kind of hat that's a euphemism for murder? Or is it talking about being exploited by the institution that's ultimately got blood on its hands and will kill you because it's hard-headed? I man, these albums really make you think. They will mess with your head. I think that was the finale piece. Lick Your Fingers Clean was it. This album was incredibly cool. As a whole, it went a different direction than I thought it was going to. When it started off with Aqualung and Cross-Eyed Mary, Mother Goose, it builds up. I think Hampstead Village, it builds up this kind of impoverished UK village kind of vibe. And it talks about the perspectives of different people who live in that place, the exploited worker, disabled people, people who have long since crumbled and folded under the pressure of that system and are destitute with nowhere else to go but the occasional compassion of people who actually have resources. And you also get the perspective of people who are doing the exploiting, are profiting off of the exploiting. And then you also get the perspective of people who are just living their lives and trying to be happy together and wondering if things are going to be okay. A very relatable you and me kind of perspective that's a lot less fly on the wall. But then it starts talking about not people, but institutions. It talks about religion and politics, and it talks about how not only are these things still the things that exploit us, but the systems that crafted the way of life that we undergo now are the same institutions. They are one and the same. These are institutions that are tens of thousands of years old and have dominated our culture and our economies for a very long time. So there is a level of compassion that we should have for people who are trapped within that system and have been crushed by it. And we should have empathy for people who never had a chance within the system because of how inherently exploitative and profit driven it is. It's a situation that is so powerful and indifferent to suffering that the best response that we can make to it is compassion. It's to be that guy in the quiet verses of Aqualung that tell him not to run away scared and offer him help. There's a big discussion here, I think, about society and about compassion and about exploitation. Aqualung is not just the end result of a society that exploits people, but he's also a kind of a Rorschach. What do you see when you look at what Aqualung does? Do you see somebody that's been exploited and discarded, or do you see something more sinister based on your social conditioning, by the way? It's all very interesting and kind of and maybe I'm off base, but I think that Ian Anderson is like, he's a learned and worldly enough guy that I think this is the kind of highbrow discussion that he would be having with his music. This came out in 1971, incredibly old album. But if you go check out interviews with Ian Anderson, these are the kinds of conversations that he's having. He's a deep, philosophical, political guy who talks about modern American politics in interviews. He's very open about his beliefs. And I think that a discussion of this man's art necessarily includes a description and a discussion of religion and politics. I think that we have to be open to difficult, hard to swallow pills, uncomfortable truths. People are often exploited because religious beliefs and doctrines are being exploited for the sake of exploitation. It's not even the claim that the religion is inherently exploitative, but it is the way that it gets wielded as a weapon and also as a shield from criticism that leads to exploitation. And the cascading effects of that on society as a whole. How does this affect people from the top down? I think that these kinds of conversations are incredibly important and really cool to be included on such an incredibly monumental album in rock and roll history. This album was incredibly cool. I'm definitely going to get into more Ian Anderson. I'm definitely going to get into more Jethro Tull. And man, I'm really excited to get into it, because this album being like a first impression, like just sitting down and listening to a full Jethro Tull album all the way through. If these are the kinds of conversations that we're going to get to have, I'm really excited about that. So, I think that's it. This has been Aqualung by Jethro Tull. I think the next one that we'll do is gonna be with the Beatles, and then we'll be on to Van Morrison. So be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for editorials that are going to come out where we'll just talk about rock and roll history. We'll talk about albums that I've already listened to a million times and just want to do a deep dive on. And yeah, I think that's all I have for you. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me and listening to Aqualung, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya.